Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Winging It Waterfowl. I'm your host, Troy Miller, and with me, as always, is my main man, Blake. He is back
Oh
from
man,
deployment.
it is nice to be back home. The weather's moist down here. I don't have to worry about shriveling up and my skin being dry.
You're weak. You've been out of the panhandle for too long. You've forgotten how to moisturize.
Oh man, let me tell you, man, it was it was a little dry up there.
Yeah,
I have came home with the worst sinus infection I've had in a long time. The mesquite, and we ended up on a 13,000 or 13,500 acre fire for about 4 days, 3 or 4 days, and to breathing in all that mesquite smoke and everything else, it got a
it's
hold of
great for
me.
meats, but not great for people.
It is not great for people. I think the whole truck came back with sinus infections. So
Oh, yeah, especially
yeah,
it's rough no matter what, but it's even rougher when you're not from this kind of arid environment and region and everything, and all the different allergens. And oh, man, it's awful. And it's funny is going down there whenever you lived uh over in Trinity. When you lived over there, it's just yellow pollen everywhere. But I never had issues going down when we'd go down to your place. I don't know if it's
yeah,
just the moisture content of the air or what, but I
it's
never
gotta
had
be. I
issues.
don't.
So it's crazy, and
And
my
then I come
allergies up
home and
here are
we fight
awful.
a. And then I come home, we fight a big old forest fire here. I'm like, man, I can't get away from the fires this year.
Hey, it's what you wanted.
Yeah, yeah, but it's good to be home. I felt really bad about missing out the other weekend or other weekend last week, but man, you rocked it. Like that was a great podcast. Like you did really well.
No, I appreciate that, buddy. It was like I was telling you, that was probably the most nerve wracking recording I've ever done. Just doing it by myself, not having you to bounce it off or a guest or anything like that. So
Yeah,
I'm glad
you did
it
really good.
seemed to go well. Had some pretty good positive feedback from everyone I've heard so far. And like I said, this upcoming week we're going to get you, me, and Addison together, and we are for everyone that did send in user question, listener questions and stuff like that. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of them that I did not get to because I wanted it to be all three of us, and then some of those I'll just kind of play interviewer of y'all
Yeah.
and ask y'all some of the same questions that I went through.
Yep.
But other than that,
You.
we just finished recording with Brandon Knab this week for The Fowlers. If y'all
Yes.
haven't caught it, we were on his show 2 weeks ago. I think it was 2 episodes now from when this recording is of when his aired with us. And he's over in California. Just started his podcast a little bit after us. So he's still pretty new to the industry, pretty new to the podcasting world like we are. And it was a great conversation we had with him on his show. And then today we had a really good time talking to him. We could have talked a lot longer, and I do apologize ahead of time that we had some very big technical difficulties. I'm going to do my best to make it as enjoyable of a listening experience as possible. Unfortunately, like I said, we had to cut it short. He lost connection. We had some issues, and we just couldn't get the connection to go back where it was usable enough. So hopefully everything that we have is usable, and we do apologize in advance that it got cut off a little abrupt and we didn't quite get to finish everything we wanted to talk about. But that being said, everything that we did get to talk about was great content. Really enjoyed
Yeah.
getting to hear a lot about his waterfowl journey. He started like us a little bit later in life, and definitely a different hunting environment. A lot more option, a lot more different ecosystems and hunting variety, and definitely the different bag limit stuff like that. So it's always nice to hear because we've never been to California or anything like that. So at least to hunt. So it was nice to hear from someone over there for once, and kind of getting out of our little Central and Mississippi Flyway venture out from our little circle we've been making lately, which love
Yeah.
talking to those guys. But man, we went on quite the run, our Wisconsin run there for a while.
Yeah, we did.
Speaking of the Wisconsin run, we've got Big River Ammunition. Uh, they are the official shotgun ammo. And if you are a listener here, he is giving you a free discount code, and it's free shipping on all orders over $100. Just use code Winging It at checkout. And then we have TFS Cable Works, and I've got a couple other things up here, and I wish I had thought to grab it. I got my dog collar and dog leash in this last week and got to use it. And I know I posted some stuff on Instagram. I'll have some more going on, but man, he made me a teal one, custom made that one. Like he didn't even have it. I was like, well, whenever you get it, and that dude just like done, sit there and ordered it, sent me a picture. He's like, what do you think of this color? I was like, I love it. And he had it to me within a week. And I'm telling y'all, I love that stuff. That biothane is so nice. And he ordered a different thickness stuff. So I mean it's still super tough, but it's not nearly as thick and it's nice and soft. He got me a nice matching leash and collar for old Ruth, and she looks sharp. That teal on a chocolate lab is sharp. So, and if you go check his stuff out, anything of his handmade stuff, not like shirts and caps and whatever else he has on there, but even his handmade stuff, the biothane, the cable work, cable stuff. If you use code Winging It 20, you get 20% off at checkout from his shop store. And then uh, Ty, if any of y'all remember, he is the one who sent me this back kind of midway through season. I didn't get to use it a whole lot, just the way my season ended. But he is over at Dust Bowl Falco, and he's actually partnered up with Dylan from TFS, and they're kind of doing some collaboration on some stuff. So definitely go check him out as well. He is Dust Bowl Falco on shop, and he does handmade uh, paracord lanyards. And I got to tell you, I love this thing. And he was telling me the other day, me and him were chatting back and forth. He's like, I've made so many improvements since I did yours. But he just wanted to, kind of let everyone know that, and kind of get some traction going with his store. He's doing really good stuff and really cool stuff. And like I said, he does some stuff with leather, collaborates with a guy that does some leather. And then he also collaborates and does, like, he'll do like the paracord top and cable bottoms. So he's got all kinds of stuff going on over there. And anything he has in stock on shop, if you use code Winging It 10, you'll get 10% off at checkout. So all these guys we've talked to, if you haven't got a chance to listen to the episodes where we talk to them, make sure and go check them out and let them know where you heard about them from. Order some stuff from them. Now in the off season is the time to be ordering a bunch of this stuff, so it's not all piling up on you. And if it's something like new lanyard or anything like that, if you got one that's on the brink of going out, might as well just go get you a new one before the season starts and you lose a couple $100 in calls in the marsh.
Yeah.
So y'all go check them out. Supporting some hunters and some great people. Well, anything else you want to elaborate on or let everyone know about
Well,
this week?
I think they did good. Actually, Troy's gonna hopefully tomorrow join the Beaver Tail group. We found him a boat down in Austin, and it's taking a little bit of talking to
It is.
everybody that we know to get it, but
It has been a logistical nightmare, and I'm not going to say it's mine until it's mine.
we'll know better tomorrow about noon, 1 o'clock
Yeah,
area. So,
we're going
but
to be playing telephone tag and Venmo tag to get
yeah,
this boat
yeah,
figured
it's
out.
but
But we're going to
no,
start
I
us a
mean,
little boat gang.
yeah, we have a little Beaver Tail boat gang. So, the episode went great. He's a great guy, very passionate about waterfowl, just like everyone else we talked to. So, y'all take a listen. Don't just listen to him on ours. Go over and listen to him on
And
his podcast too. So,
I don't know how much on the editing I'll have to cut out that's usable, but he we tried to get him to plug his stuff at the end, but if it doesn't come out, he is For The Fowlers, and he was letting us know he is on Instagram, not on TikTok yet, and he is now on YouTube. So it is FOR for The Fowlers. Y'all go check him out and give his show a listen, especially anyone interested in California hunting and how all that works over there. So other than that, we appreciate everyone tuning back in, and we will jump right in. Thank you for joining us all for another episode of Winging at Waterfowl. This will be episode 28, and we have a special guest tonight, Brandon Knab. He is the host of For The Fowlers podcast, and then also with me, as usual, is my co-host, Blake Horton. So, Brandon, why don't you kind of jump in, tell us who you are, what you do, where you're from. Me and Blake got the honor and privilege of getting to talk on your podcast a couple weeks ago, and now we get to know a little bit about you.
Yeah, boys, it's good to see you guys again. Great conversation a couple weeks ago when you guys were guests on For the Fowler. So can't thank you enough for you guys coming on there. Like you, it's kind of an early part of my podcast journey here, but no, big fans of your guys' show, and yeah, thank you again for coming on. Yeah, Troy, like you said, my name's Brandon Knab. I host a podcast out here in California called For the Fowlers, kind of waterfowl related podcast. But a little bit about myself. I live in Northern California, just northeast of Sacramento, out here in the Sacramento Valley, a little town called Roseville. It's not too little. It's grown quite a bit. My wife and we moved out here about 4 years ago. I'm originally from the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area, and that's where I grew up. And you know, yeah, that was home to me. But it's funny, growing up in the Bay Area, I didn't, I did a lot of outdoor activities, camping, fishing, all that, but I didn't do a lot of hunting. I didn't really, pick that up until I was, in my latter years. But yeah, really enjoy living out here. It's, there's tons of things to do. Obviously, where we live, it's just an absolute beautiful part of the country, tons of outdoor activities, hunting, fishing. Tomorrow, wife and my son, we're heading up to Lake Tahoe. We just got a bunch of snow up there, so we'll get out there and, just kind of enjoy that. But yeah, tons of things to do out here.
Awesome. And in your area, how far is Tahoe from you?
Tomorrow, where we're going, is just about an hour and a half drive. So yeah, we're just going to the North Lake area. It's either North Lake or South Lake. We'll be up in a town called Truckee, just west of Reno, on this side of the Nevada state line. And, we're going up there with some friends. We're renting a house up there. And, just, it's funny. You kind of put away, hang it up after waterfowl season. You got kind of a few weeks before turkey season and all that. So, get out there and spend some time with the family. It'll be a lot of fun.
Yes, sir. Now, you said you got started later in life in hunting. Walk us through who got you started and how that all came about. Did you start with family or friends, or kind of tell us a little bit more about that and elaborate on it?
Yeah, I didn't have anyone in my family that was big into hunting. My grandpa, that's really where I got kind of the outdoor itch. He did a lot of scouting, and when I say scout, Boy Scouts and stuff like that. Grew up was an Eagle Scout, and then just kind of instilled that in me. Like I said, we loved camping. We'd go whitewater rafting. We'd do fishing. Whether it was stream, lakes, whatever it might be. A lot of fun there, but really never had any exposure into any shooting sports. Occasionally, I have some family in law enforcement. They'd take me out. We'd go, shooting handguns at their range or whatnot. But it really wasn't until after college that I got into waterfowl hunting, and how that happened was, it's funny. My college roommate, towards the end of school, he got into waterfowl hunting, but still, I just wasn't into it. Never went, it just wasn't really my, something I desired doing. And so it was right there at my fingertips, but I just never took advantage of it. And then after I graduated from school, I moved back home to my hometown, and moved in with a couple buddies. We had a house, a fun area, just, a few bachelors hanging out, and a couple guys next to us. That's who got me into hunting. He's like my mentor. So it's funny. I met him, my first experience meeting this guy. And let me backtrack just a little bit. So I'm in sales. I work in the adult beverage industry. To keep it simple, I basically work for the company that owns Jack Daniels. And that kind of kicks into this story here. Is we move in, and we were kind of on a hill the way we lived, and so his house was just a little bit below ours. So when we were out on like our deck, we could see into their backyard. And he comes out. We've never met this guy a day in our life, and he sees me out there, and he yells at me. He's like, "Hey, you, stop right there!" And so I'm like, "Okay, what's going on here? What did I do?" He comes out. He's got a bottle of Jack, and he's like, "We're welcoming you to the neighborhood. Come take a shot with me." So that was my first interaction with him. But what was really cool about that was it was kind of one of those kind of like open door policies where we'd go over to his house, he'd come over to our house. It was a lot of fun. But he grew up hunting, big game, waterfowl, upland, all that stuff. And just by just kind of hanging out around the campfire in the backyard, or barbecuing or whatnot, just the conversation started happening. And next thing he's showing me all his different shotguns, and I'm learning more about the difference between a pump and semi and all these different things to become familiar with it. And he ended up taking me out to the trap range, and for some reason I just was like, this guy knows his stuff. So I felt really comfortable learning from him, everything from safety to just a kind of a foundation if I wanted to get into it. And so I know, kind of rambling here, but he ended up inviting me. He was going out on a hunt out in the San Francisco Bay in his kind of flat buddy boat, hunting some of the marsh sloughs back there. And he's like, "Hey, I'm going to go out hunting with my buddy this morning, but why don't you come out, meet me at the dock around 2-3 o'clock." And I went out and joined him for an afternoon shoot. I didn't have my license or anything, but I was just there as a non-hunter just to check it out. And I go out there, and this is how inexperienced I was when it comes to waterfowl. So here I am. I'm like, well, if I'm going to hunt, I need to get all my camo gear, right? So I go to the local sporting goods shop, and I get all the like Browning, like real tree, woodland camo, nothing, no Optifade, no mossy oak, like none of this stuff. Like I was ready to go. And so it's funny, my first hat was a camo hat with like a bright blaze orange, Browning logo on the front, on the top of my hat here. I had gloves, everything, and I just show up at the dock. He picks me up, and, he never said anything about it, but, yeah, I go out there and was just hooked, to kind of see, everything that goes into it, from the scouting, the calling, obviously the harvest itself. And then by this time, I had already had an opportunity to enjoy some of the game that he brought home previously. So I knew that I would enjoy, the benefits of the harvest. But yeah, it was shortly after that. I think that next season in the off season, I did my hunter safety, and, the rest is history.
So how old were you at this time when you started
This was
hunting
probably
with him?
about 15 years ago now. Yeah.
Okay.
So, what is it? About 23, 24,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, no. So it was one of those where, like, I was starting my career and just kind of looking for like that hobby where, like, you're kind of moving home back from school, excuse me, and just, trying to find something additional to do in the wintertime, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. And just to kind of take it a step further, is like, obviously when I started out, I was so dependent on him going out. Hey, his name's Dan, and I said, "Dan, are you going out this weekend? Are you going out? Can I go with you?" Not having the like tools, resources, or even the confidence to go out by myself, right? And then shortly after, you go a few hunts, and I think it was by probably like mid my second season where I was like, I'm going to go out by myself, because you got kind of tired of waiting for folks to be available. And ever since then, I've just been absolutely hooked into the sport.
How was your first experience? Kind of talk us through like your first hunt by yourself, like your first solo hunt. How was that?
Yeah, I think by this time, I had a few opportunities, like, was doing a lot of public land hunting, hunting some of the refuges up here, and a lot of them were like marshes. And so, really for me, the confidence, or what I want to make sure I was comfortable with, was like, I knew how to kind of select a blind, do all that stuff, but it was about kind of, setting up the decoys, making sure I'm not going into a pond where I'm going to, crest my waders and, just it's going to be a mess. But yeah, I would say probably my first experience was out of one of the local refuges. And what was cool about that, and this is what I tell folks, whether it's on my podcast or anyone that like is getting started into the sport, the best thing about going out on a solo hunt is it's all on you, right? The success, sometimes the failures, we talked about getting skunked and stuff like that, but when you have a good hunt day or, even if you just get a handful of birds, like, everything from the setup to what loadout you brought out, where you went, what direction you were set up in, ultimately how the birds worked, how they came in, all that stuff. And so that's where it was like, okay, it was kind of like a graduation, if you will, like you go through this mentorship, everyone's kind of holding your hand, and then ultimately it's like, hey, this is my chance to kind of prove it to myself. So yeah, I think it was because like obviously I had the bug, and a lot of folks, obviously I have like my buddies that I hunt with, but at this time, like, wasn't married, I was single. Like, it's like if I had a free moment, it didn't matter if it was a 75, 80-degree day, like in late October or early November. I was sitting out there, and we call it tip to tip. I'd be out there shoot light to shoot light, waiting for trying to get that seventh bird, and now looking back, we're like, yeah, it's 9:30, 10 o'clock. The flight's done. I'm going home, you know? But it didn't matter.
So were you successful on your first one? Your first solo hunt?
God, you know what? I honestly, Blake, wish that I knew, that I remembered, I think that by success, I would say, because I remember I probably didn't get my first limit till probably maybe at least year 3. So, I don't really judge success over like, hey, how many, did I get that limit or whatnot? It's like, I'd say I was successful because obviously like I made it, right? I was safe, made it home that night. But no,
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. It wasn't like one of those where it's like it ruined it for me, So,
Yeah.
no, it was good. It was a lot of fun. I think what was cool about it was,
Yeah.
I was so used to doing what we call like these party hunts where, if we're going to the public land and our reservation, we have a reservation system out here, if it calls for 3 or 4 hunters, we were filling that. We're like, hey, I'm gonna get 3 or 4 buddies to come out, not realizing that it's like, you know what? I just want to tuck in by myself, or maybe have one other guy that we have similar hunt styles. So that way we don't kind of ruin the hunt, flaring birds or, my buddies, and maybe you guys, have this kind of take too, is like, we always say, like, if you get like 3 or 4 hunters together, there's always 5 or 6 opinions. So, everyone thinks, their way's the right way and all that stuff. So, once again, going back, it's like, hey, this is how we're doing it. And yeah, I enjoy it. So that being said, I do enjoy hunting with my buddies, though. It's a lot of fun.
Now, your initial hunting style, how much has it changed from when you first started and kind of branching out on your own to now? Do you see quite a bit of a difference and improvement and growth, or do you kind of still stick true to the roots that you started with in hunting style?
No, what's interesting is, and this probably segues into California hunting, especially here in Northern California, is we have so many different habitat and different regions that we can hunt out here. So, obviously I'm much more confident to, maybe go hunt the marsh by the San Francisco Bay, or going to hunt the grasslands down in the Central Valley where it becomes more of a teal shoot. Obviously up in the Sacramento Valley, we got some of the big ducks and geese and stuff like that. So, obviously, if we fast forward 10 years or so, or 10 plus years to kind of where we're at now, is, yeah, my style has changed, where it's like, I know, depending on the opportunity that I have, how many folks do I want to invite? Like, or if I'm talking, I have my one hunting partner. He's kind of my co-host on my show. That's Caden. It's normally he and I, and then we kind of go out from there. But, we know kind of the setup that we want to do, where we want to get, like, once we get there, kind of where we want to go. so it's just the knowledge and confidence is so much greater. And even things like, I talked about birds working and stuff. Like the biggest thing was, waterfowl IDing. And I talk about that on my podcast too. It's like, becoming more comfortable with like what kind of birds I actually enjoy, you know, on the table at home, right? So I'm not just kind of going to go out there to shoot. Obviously, every bird that we harvest, has, we find a way to take care of that. But whether it's through cooking or jerky sticks or whatever it might be. But yeah, the waterfowl ID, that's the biggest one. Out here in our flyway, we have everything, and I feel like when I first started, it was either a mallard or a spoonie. Other than that, it was a duck, for me. But now you kind of know what you're pursuing. And it's interesting. You go out and, like my hunting partner, I got him into it, so now I'm at this point now where I can be a mentor to others, right? Whether it's, hunting safety, firearm safety.
That was a question I was going to ask you if you'd kind of taken someone on.
Yeah, a couple of my buddies, one of my good friends, we started together, but if I, dove into the deep end, he kind of dipped his toe in the shallow end. He enjoyed it, but it just wasn't really like something that he like was, for me, like I was, listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos, checking out everyone's Instagram, just trying to get better. And for him, he just enjoyed the camaraderie and everything. But, I brought him along multiple times, like I mentioned, my hunting partner, I won't sit here and take all the credit, but, I think it was just, I was still learning, but I definitely was much further along and just, we got better together. So
that's a great part about taking on buddies and, starting something together. Like me and Blake, we started at the same time, but he definitely, like we discussed, he dove off the deep end real fast. And I kind of took the more slow approach from the shallow end to my style. But we've learned a lot together. So
yeah. And everyone's different, right? Like I said, I was, single, living with my buddies. Like if it was a slow day at work or had nothing going on the weekend, like I remember when we bought into our first club and started leasing property, we had a clubhouse there. And so I would leave on like Friday morning, being in sales, I'd go work that territory near where the clubhouse was. And I'd be at the clubhouse from like Friday to Monday morning, it's just a mix of guys, and it was a lot of fun, just the camaraderie, dinner, breakfast, doing the shoots together. It was a lot of fun. But, obviously, as we've gotten older and, just like my buddy Caden, he gets out quite a bit, but, married, he's got multiple kids and obviously job and all that stuff. So as we all know, and, you guys know, I just had my first son. And so like things are changing, I didn't buy into any private blinds this year just cause I was like, I'm not going to be able to get out as much as I expected this past season, just knowing that my son being born in July, for me to think that I was going to be able to go hunt every single weekend starting in late October. I mean, that wasn't going to happen. So.
Yes, sir. So talking about the California hunting and everything, moving into that direction.
I'm sorry, talk about California. What was the second part?
What all kind of ecosystems are you hunting? Because I know y'all have a slew of just about anything you could possibly imagine. Do you get into diver hunting, or do you mostly stick inland? Kind of walk us through all that and all the different things you've experienced and tried out in your area.
Yeah, for sure. So I mostly stay inland here. There's some great opportunities to go out and do some like sea ducks and get out on the bay and do some of those like floating layouts and get after the diver hunts. And don't get me wrong, that is on my bucket list. That's on my short list of things to do. And honestly, I just need to set it up, just find an opportunity to get out with an outfitter and go do it. But for me, when I first started hunting, I was living in the Bay Area. So I actually would go out and we had some kind of tidal wetlands and different things right off of like the San Francisco Bay there that you can go out and hunt. And, you get some divers out there, but, you get a lot of spoonies and just, some mallards and various big ducks out there. That was always a lot of fun. But then you can go up into the Sacramento Valley where I primarily hunt now, and tons of rice fields out here. I mean, that's just all it is. It's flooded rice. And then, some marshlands that, obviously some private properties and various clubs and some of the refuges out here that they've maintained. But that I really enjoy doing that kind of hunting. That seems to be what I do the most of these days, just because the proximity to home. You can be, if I go out like this past season, I got a couple invites to hunt my buddy's blind, and we'll be out to the rice field. It's, about an hour, door to door, which is a little bit of a hike. I mean, there's obviously closer options, but the hunting, in my opinion, isn't as good as, you go out and kind of work for it a little bit and make the drive. I feel like you get rewarded that way. Just out here in Sacramento, kind of a local spot here, we have it's right off the Sacramento River, and the Sacramento River is just kind of like the guide or the interstate for those birds as they migrate south. But we have like a bypass down here that when it floods, it's really good. That's a great option, and obviously when the flooding happens, it kind of opens up some wood duck holes and different things like that. So I don't really hunt too many wood ducks, but occasionally you can get back in there if you know someone with the boat. It can be a lot of fun. And then I mentioned kind of the grasslands area, and the grasslands is probably about an hour and a half south of Sacramento here. If you were to drive from like Sacramento, San Francisco down towards LA, you would drive through what they call the grasslands area there. And a lot of private clubs out there, but just a lot of marshland. And that's a fun one. I mean, you're just shooting teal all season out there. But you'll get your geese, you'll get your pintail, you'll get your mallards, all that stuff. But kind of going back to what I prefer doing is like I spend a lot of time in Sacramento or the Sacramento Valley, but what's really cool, kind of going back to what I was saying about how you can do so many different things being in the middle of California here, just recreationally, like with your family or in your spare time. When it comes to waterfowl hunting, I'm about an hour from each one of those habitats, maybe an hour and a half at times. So, no, it's, in my opinion, kind of the mecca of waterfowl hunting. And I know all of us would make an argument
Yes,
for our
sir.
home area too, but when
Not
when
me.
you think about the Pacific
No, I say
Flyway,
not me.
yeah. But when you think about the Pacific
But it's not.
Flyway
I
in
mean,
Northern
it really
California,
sounds like y'all have. It sounds like y'all have everything. I mean, for us to have all that in one spot, we'd have to travel. I mean, 5 or 6 hours probably to get all that in one spot, and it's within 2 hours from you. I mean, that's a big difference.
yeah, that's what's funny is when you listen to some other podcasts, or you talk to folks from around here. Obviously, for folks outside of California, you kind of see what gets kind of put on the news and all that stuff about California and the big cities. You think about San Francisco, LA, all that stuff. But when you look at it on a map, I mean, yeah, that's where the majority of the population is, but that's just such a small percentage of the overall landmass of California. So yeah, to your point, Blake, like not just with waterfowl hunting, but just like this is an outdoorsman's like dream, like between the fishing that we have available. I mean, striper season's coming up. I mentioned doing turkey. I mean, we have a ton of upland opportunities. I love dove hunting out here. I don't do much deer hunting. It's pretty tough out here, but I mean, whatever you want to pursue, wild pig, that's a great time. I've done that a handful of times. So, um, there's so much to do outside of just, those kind of 100 days in the late fall and winter for waterfowl season.
Yes, sir. Now, looking at having quite the vast ecosystems, differences in ecosystems, do you see as much weather fluctuation with birds, or having all that agriculture and all the differences in the water and everything else? Do y'all's birds stay pretty steady from year to year?
No, what's interesting is what's nice about having the different regions or ecosystems is like if one part of, let's just focus on Northern California, because there is waterfowl hunting down in Southern California. I didn't know much about it until this season when I actually had a guy on from Southern California on my podcast, and he kind of explained the Southern California area. But for the sake of talking California hunting, we'll focus on Northern California. What's nice is when one region maybe slows down due to weather or migration or whatever, it seems like there's always another one that's picking up, right? So it's like you're always like, hey, where are the birds at? You're kind of following the reports. And you know what's cool out here is, as competitive as it is, we have a pretty good network, where folks, do hope that others are successful. They're relying on that information too. Like, don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of headlight wars and parking lot wars and different things going on there, but for the most part, at least in my network, we're pretty supportive and be like, hey, how'd you shoot over here? How'd you shoot over there? To kind of talk a little bit about weather. Obviously in California, we have some fantastic weather, right? And, there's times where it'll be opening day and you're out there wondering, why am I wearing waders right now? It's so hot. The mosquitoes are out. You're basically like, you're just wearing them because you tried to get from, the levee to your blind or whatnot. But you're out there like in a t-shirt, and that can go on, well into Thanksgiving, where you're just like, man, we're always watching the weather up in the temperatures up in Washington and down into Oregon to be like, okay, it's 40 degrees just up in Klamath, on the other side, or they're coming, boys, they're coming, jokingly, but not really. My hunting partner, he lives about 3 hours north, and I'm always like, hey, what's the weather like up there? Like, are the birds coming down? So obviously that plays a big part into it, where obviously that migration or that push that can be sometimes in November, sometimes it could be after Christmas, right? This year was interesting. I don't know if you guys heard about it. We were calling it like Fogageddon. We were fogged in for like 6-7 weeks straight, and it was all over social media where basically they were showing satellite pictures where the whole state, the whole Central Valley was just fogged in with that Thule fog where it's real thick and there's no weather to break it up, push it out, nothing. And so that one really messed with the birds. And listening to some kind of professional outfitters and guides on some different podcasts out here locally is the birds were getting all out of whack up above the fog, right? So they're missing kind of their exit or their turnoff off the interstate where they would normally come down here into the Sacramento Valley. And, they're going further south, or they're shooting a little bit west off the normal flyway. Like, we were seeing like speckle-bellied geese out in parts of NorCal that you would never see them at, just because they're probably getting lost and disoriented up there. Or finally there's a little break in the fog. All right, boys, let's go in there. And they're like, we've never been here before. The birds are trying to figure that one out. So yeah, that was really interesting this year. Just a lot of stale weather, just every morning you wake up and you got that bad fog, and we were just like, man. And every hunter has their preference, but we're like, man, we just need a little weather just to break this up, some wind or something. But like I said at the beginning of this part here, is like, we love our weather out here in California, but sometimes, it sometimes can be detrimental to the waterfowl season. So I was gonna say one more thing. What ended up happening this year was when the rain did come, it came so fast and so much that it kind of flooded everything out. And next thing you know, all the rice fields are flooded. Everyone's decoys are, all over the valley because they've all flooded up. The bypasses, we almost got too much water. So it's like, what do we want, So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was in a similar situation of too much or too little, trying to find that sweet spot. Do y'all have water control on any of y'all's land out there outside of the rice fields? Do you hunt public, or how do they manage all that area?
That's another. Yeah, so I mostly hunt. The last few years I've been mostly doing some public hunting, and there's obviously not to get like political, but sometimes like, when there's like issues with government shutdown and stuff like that, or budgets, it could be something as simple as like a new well project or a levee repair, and those things don't get done. So next thing you know, public land might not be holding as much water as it normally would, or the amount of hunting access isn't there because the ponds aren't holding water, or they couldn't get this well fixed. And then I mentioned with those bypasses, and so occasionally, like when the rain starts coming, that's when they open up some of the dams and some of the reservoirs up here, and then that just floods down into the valley. So it's one of those where, once again, it's like, man, we need the rain, we need the water, but from a recreation standpoint or a sportsman's standpoint, it's like, it can almost end the season, or kind of mess with hunting for a few weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know we could sit here and probably talk California hunting all day and night. So before we get too carried away with that anymore, walk us through getting the podcast started, because you're sitting at, I think you're just like right behind us. So probably 6 months you've been going at it now. Walk us through how
not
you
quite.
got started with that. What kind of started the idea and pushed you towards it?
Yeah, the podcast is something that I've been thinking about for about at least 4 or 5 years, and what's funny is I was kind of thinking about how I want to talk about this, and I was really late to the podcast game. Like I was really big, and I'd always listen to Spotify or your local radio or whatnot, but I'm big into music. But then all of a sudden you start listening to these podcasts, and it doesn't always need to be, the most, the chart topping host or whatnot. You find these like kind of local shows or things that you're more interested in. And, it could be, just like someone with like a really small audience, but hey, I feel like they're speaking to me here. I really enjoy that kind of stuff. And so, then I started kind of venturing into waterfowl podcasts and finding different folks that were doing, whether it's waterfowl or outdoors and things like that. And you start to realize that, a lot of it can be interviews, guest interviews, but a lot of it's just conversation, just a couple buddies with a microphone, and they're just on there a couple times a week or a couple times a month, whatever it might be. And, they're just kind of chatting. And the reason why I wanted to do this, and what I kind of started talking about, or when I was thinking about this a few years ago, is, and I think it's how a lot of like these waterfowl podcasts start, and and I talked about this with you guys, is, we spend all this time like in the blind, we're chatting with our buddies, we're especially when it gets slow out there, we're talking, we're chatting about the hunt, all these different things, just kind of BSing. We get in the car, we go our separate ways to drive home. What do? We're calling each other, we're breaking down the hunt, we're talking about the next hunt, whatever it might be. And then what happens is, you're out running errands with the family, and all of a sudden, your hunting partner's, name pops up on the Apple screen there on your car, and the wife just rolls her eyes, right? And she's like, "You guys were just together for 6 hours, or you guys chat all the time, right?" And so it's like, that's a good point. And I think you guys said it best. I think it was like, you know what? Let's start this podcast, because then we have this dedicated time where it's like, hey, like our spouses know, our family, our friends know that, like, hey, Brandon's recording, on Sunday night or Tuesday night, whatever it might be. So I had this time to kind of set aside to chat waterfowl hunting, or to whatever I wanted to do. So why this season? I mentioned I had my son, and I had a lot of concerns that I wasn't going to be able to get out with the boys and hunt as much. And hindsight's always 2020. I thought like, hey, I can record a podcast, for an hour a week, but then you kind of think about the editing and, meeting folks and just engaging with the listeners, and, setting up guests and all this stuff. But anyway, it was still less time than me, leaving the house at 3 a.m, going hunting, and getting home at like 3 p.m. So, I still wanted to stay connected to the sport that I really enjoy. And so I've met some fantastic people. Obviously, you two guys, a fan of your show, but it's cool to meet folks outside of like my California hunting bubble. And yeah, no, it's been a lot of fun. A lot of challenges, learning things about myself. But no, it's been a lot of fun. I think yeah, when we're recording this, coming up on about 20 episodes. I'm looking at the calendar now. Yeah, just about 5 months in. And it's been great.
What is the biggest change you've seen of what your original vision is to where you're at now and what direction you're heading?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's funny. I connected with, and they were on my show, I want to say episode maybe 4 or 5. And some guys out here, I'll give them a shout out, the Filthy Spoon podcast. These guys, two of the great guys. They're hilarious, and I really liked their format, like just kind of the banter back and forth. But one thing that I saw is like, as they got bigger and all this stuff, I knew that like, I was like, hey, that's going to take a lot of work. But when it comes to kind of what I wanted to do from the beginning was, before I got to that point, or obviously I aspire to be there, but was I wanted to do kind of a mentorship, like for folks that don't have, like, maybe their dad doesn't hunt, or they don't have someone there that can take them, uh, every weekend or whatever it might be. So I wanted to put something where it's like, hey, we could get guys that are beginners, talk about, our refuge system, talk about, the gear that you need, high dollar guns versus, budget friendly guns. And then what's funny is I mentioned the guys from Filthy Spoon because when they were on, that's kind of the direction that I was going. And I had them on, I think episode 4 or 5, like I said, but it was funny. They talked about when they made a pivot on their podcast, and it was about their first couple episodes, which I thought were great. They said, hey, we started off basically, the co-host was saying, he's like, yeah, we were basically talking about duck hunting if like an alien came, and like we had to explain it to him, like basically started off so basic. And it was interesting where I was like, that is a good point, because most folks that are waterfowl hunting or that are diving into a podcast already have some sort of foundation, right? Maybe they've, they understand you need waders. Yes, they understand that you need a shotgun. They understand what a mallard looks like, right? And so I didn't necessarily need to dumb it down that much or to go that basic. So it's been interesting because when I have my whole whiteboard in my garage, all the episode ideas that I had were basically like, all right, everything from hunter safety to the first time you go out to a refuge, or the first time you go to your local Cabela's and, want to go buy a shotgun. So that's been kind of a tough pivot, because now I'm having to kind of kind of refigure out the identity of the podcast,
What success is your biggest, I guess, biggest success story you've had so far that you can see about yourself, maybe about the podcast or a guest or an impact you've made so far?
Yeah, I think, I mean, kind of like a personal success is, when I started this, I wasn't sure if it was just going to be me and my buddies just talking into a microphone, and maybe a couple people listens. And, I know mom and dad will always check it out just to be supportive and stuff like that. But I thought it was pretty cool. Like one time, pretty early in the season, actually. So I was probably like maybe 3 or 4 episodes in, and someone actually came up to me in a parking lot and said like, hey, big fan of the show, that type of thing. And they were kind of giving me this really constructive feedback, obviously, talking about how they were fans of, but they were also saying like, oh, I like yours because of this, or yeah, I like that you don't really not mention, but they found like that I was kind of like not trying to be like every other waterfowl podcast, and that's still what we're trying to
That's
kind of
great.
figure out, because, it is a tight community, like obviously I've connected with you guys, and on Monday here, I'm going to have Ty, release the episode of Ty from Dust Bowl. on, right? So it's like we kind of have the same folks, that we chat with, but still you got to kind of find your kind of niche and everything. And so for me, it's like, how do I tie it back into like Northern California hunting? Still kind of want to focus on that mentorship. And because one thing that we always say on ours, and I hear you guys say it on yours all the time, I am not an expert. My buddies that are on, we are not experts, right? Like we're not professional guides. We're not running an outfit here. We're just, some weekend warriors who like really enjoy this and we take it seriously. We want to do it right, not just for, the sport itself, but obviously for the game that we're out pursuing too. Ethics are huge with our hunting group. Following every rule, regulation, all that stuff. Like we don't compromise on any of that stuff. And that's why I think we keep our group so tight too.
Yes, sir. Now, fitting into the podcasting, what has been the kind of biggest struggle you've had so far, whether that be, guest or editing or even just coming up with things to talk about? What would you say has been your biggest struggle and that you've had to overcome through keeping the podcast going?
Yeah, I think it's keeping the content fresh, obviously you think like, oh, I would really love to talk about this, but it's like, do folks want to listen to it? Right. So that's obviously something you're always trying to make sure, like, what do the listeners want to engage with? And so I really try to look at the analytics where I'll see spikes in different episodes. And I don't know if that has to do with, when it was released or was it the content, stuff like that. So I do rely a lot on like listener feedback and communicating, whether it's through email or Instagram, stuff like that. That's been a huge help, because until someone says like, hey, that episode was horrible, like I put it out and I think it's the best one ever. And what's interesting is some of the episodes where I was like, hey, I just kind of threw this one together, they end up being like your best ones, right? And then one of the things that did really well for us this year was we did kind of like a season check-in every month. And I honestly put that together because I was like, man, what do I do? Like the first week, the first one that we did end of November, it was kind of a weird time around Thanksgiving. It was tough to kind of line folks up. I was traveling and all this. And I'm like, well, let me just call a handful of guys. Let's get their perspective. And it just kind of came together organically where I was like, I realized who I was talking to. So I don't know if you guys had a chance to listen to that one, but I basically started up at the Oregon state line and worked my way down to San Diego, like kind of breaking up each part of like, we had the Northeast zone, we had the Sacramento Valley. I had someone on from the Delta, the grasslands. And then I got to know Colin Osier from the Sweat Line. He lives up here now, but he hunted down in LA area. So, that was really cool. And that was one of the best episodes. So then you kind of do those, kind of end of the month. And yeah, it's been good. So. Sorry, Troy, did I lose you there?
Yes, sir. And I think you've, talking about the niche and everything, or niche, however you say it. I've never known that.
Sure.
No, sorry. I think it cut out for a second. Is there a format that you see yourself trying to stick to, or are you going to continue to let it evolve naturally and organically, or is there something that you're wanting to aim towards with this in the future as you get bigger and go further?
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting about format is kind of diving into the analytics. You kind of try to find that sweet spot for like length of an episode, when to release, stuff like that. Once again, what do folks want to listen to? So, obviously I want to hear folks talk about what, why they're passionate about waterfowl. Maybe it's a product that they've made or a different spin on an existing product. Obviously just kind of the average hunters. I've enjoyed getting to know those folks over the last few months, where I love hearing different stories about how folks get into waterfowl hunting, how it's evolved, kind of the things that I was talking about earlier on our episode, where it's like, we all have a different way of how we got into it. But then, and when in our life we got into it, but then, kind of what avenue it went from there. And then, we continue just to tie it back into Northern California. That's been kind of an interesting one. And what I've liked about having conversations with you guys and then, talking with Ty and everything is like, I do appreciate hearing from other folks, because one thing that when I was looking at kind of like the data from our show is we have listeners from the majority of our listeners are based in California, but we have tons of folks from, the Midwest, the Southwest, even the East Coast, and so it's just good to get to know, different stories and stuff like that. But as far as like the format
I'd
goes,
definitely say
we just want to keep things fresh, and we're trying to figure out. I say we're some big podcast, but I'm trying to figure out kind of what I want the off season to look like, things like that, because obviously things just get really busy too. But it's what's nice is you've had a lot of folks that have said like, hey, whether they're professionals or they're amateur, whatever it might be, like waterfowl season's just busy for everyone. So everyone's like, hey, let's talk after season. So right now I'm kind of having those conversations right now.
yes, sir. I'd definitely say the networking was. I knew that would be I thought it would be an issue, but I never realized that would be like the biggest, like, I guess, reward to all of this is the networking with people from all over and different walks of life that are in the industry and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
I'm sure that's probably been the same outcome for you.
Yeah, I definitely I enjoy it just because for me, I'm a social person. Obviously, like in my professional life, just being in sales and marketing, like I have relationships with so many different people. But one of the biggest challenges for me personally, as I'm kind of starting For The Fowlers, is the social networking part, because I was not big into social media at all. Like I have Facebook, I have Instagram, I have a personal Instagram page, but I engage on there, but I don't overly post or do any of that kind of stuff. And so obviously when you're trying to kind of build this, this podcast and that network there, to kind of stay active on the social media. I know Blake, you handled TikTok for you guys there, and that's been a whole new thing for me to try to figure out, and I still haven't done anything on TikTok, but I know that's something that needs to get done. So, but we'll figure it all out.